All right, Phil, take it away.
All right. Well, the last time where we sort of left off is when you were in the Air Force, and mom was pregnant, and just kind of pick it up from there. What you remember of us, of having me, of mom's pregnancy with me and having me, and all like that. I know that there were some things about it being really hot in the place that you were living, and all that sort of stuff, and
Well, I wasn't in the Air Force really. You were born when I was working at Garner Aviation,
oh, okay, all right,
and we lived out in the country in Bartow, and it rented a little old house. It was right on the grounds of and by the highway that went to Arcadia from Lakeland. But this, no, I was out of the Air Force when you were born,
okay.
and I'm trying to think. You were. You can stop it a minute. I'm having a blank here.
Well, we were in Bartow.
What was Bartow like? I've heard stories of it.
No, Bartow was it was a county seat for Polk County. Contrary to believe, Polk County took in Lakeland, but Bartow was the county seat. And of course, that's where all the court dealings and everything would take place. And we lived out of town at a private home. They just had a little one-bedroom house, and we rented that. And
I remember it was a small cinder block house.
Yeah, it was. It had a little carport in it. We had to put the air conditioner in the window, but we already had it because I bought it when I was still in the Air Force to put in an apartment in Blytheville because it was so hot. Of course, the air conditioner, that was a story. A 12,000 BTU air conditioner back then was about 4 feet deep and a foot. It was humongous. Anyway, we rented that house, and it must have been built on an ant bed because we got infested with ant hills inside the house a couple of times, which upset your old mother and me. But it was out about 3 miles out of Bartow, towards Arcadia, on the Arcadia Highway. It was right on a little creek, and but it was okay. We had one sofa. It was a sofa bed at first, and then we eventually bought a bed, but we bought a sofa that converted into a bed. That's what we slept on for a good while. Then Shirley got a job in speech therapy in Lakeland, and so we moved to Lakeland. We found this little apartment in Lakeland.
Had I already been born?
Yes.
Okay.
You were born in Bartow.
Yeah.
I mean, we lived
Lakeland
there
Hospital,
in Lakeland Hospital, but you were born in Bartow. And
well, to say a little something about that.
well, it was.
Because I had a whole bunch of problems and stuff. Right?
Well, you really did. You had some serious problems. I tend to block them out because they were real tough times back then. But you were allergic to everything. Everything. You had to eat Gerber's meat-based formula, and it was so thick that we had to cut the nipples on the bottle. We had to slice them open just for you to get the stuff out. And you had, let me see, you could eat bananas, so you lived on banana flakes, and we'd mix that with water. You couldn't have milk, regular milk.
So this was after I was
Born. Not long after you were born.
Yeah, so I was actually eating cereal out of a bowl or
Out of a bottle.
out of a bottle.
Yeah,
Oh,
out
you
of
just
a,
mash
you
them up.
were, banana flakes. We'd mix it with water, and it was real thick and very healthy. But that's
Bet
all
they
you
had a
could-
real stupid looking box that those flakes came in. Huh?
Yeah, but
Banana,
anyway,
banana.
no. Let's see. I don't even remember how it came. It didn't look like a banana, I can tell you. But you were actually delivered by a good friend of Harry's, a doctor, and all the doctors that took care of you were good friends of Harry's, who was in Lakeland, and of course you got good care, and fortunately you got over the allergies pretty quick. Rick and Mark never had any allergies like you did.
Yeah.
Yours was dangerously bad for a while.
So I was really colicky and had to be rocked a lot, and that's
All
why I
the
have
time.
a
Oh yeah,
rocking
we
habit
could
now.
not put you down and let you cry because of the mucus that built up in you from the allergy. We couldn't let you, and of course we'd have turns holding you 3 hours at a time. I'd sleep for 3 hours, get up and hold you for 3 hours, and that's the way a night went through a few months maybe. I can't remember. You forget bad things in your life. But Shirley got a job in Lakeland. It was a private contractor's job as a speech therapist for the Polk County school system. And so we moved into an apartment doesn't matter. It was on a dual street in Lakeland. And the lady that rented us the apartment babysat you all day long while I was at work and while Shirley was at work. She just took care of you right there.
Were you a flight instructor during this time?
No, I was never a flight instructor,
Okay.
civilian.
Oh, okay.
No, I was a ground school instructor. I can't remember whether we talked about that in the last movie or not, but
Go ahead.
my job primarily at Bartow Air Base. It was called Bartow Air Base. It was a contract, a basic primary school, just like I went through in Malden, Missouri before. And I taught Air Force Academy cadets. The Air Force Academy wasn't open yet. And so I just came out of the Air Force and was an Air Force pilot. They thought it was very appropriate for me to teach the Air Force Academy boys. And what I did is I taught them all the subjects, just a little bit of all the subjects in Air Force primary flight training. And so I taught them aircraft engines, I taught them jet engines, I taught them navigation, I taught them radios, just basics. And when you were born, when you, Phil, were born, I was teaching at Bartow Air Base, and that's when I was teaching the Air Force Academy cadets, and I had to miss a day. And when I came back, all of the cadets, they wore these very rigid uniforms, epaulettes on their shoulders and all that. And they all came back, or when I came back from missing 2 days while you were being born, they sang "You're a Jolly Good Fellow" and all that stuff, It was, and they were good students. They were great students. They were all so, what do you call it, enthused in what they were doing, And
This would have been the crop of pilots that would be flying during the Vietnam War, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And they bought a cake and all that They were really good guys. And that's what I did basically at Bartow Air Base. And that's where I was working when you were born. And Shirley was a speech therapist for the Lakeland school system. And contract. She wasn't a regular teacher. And so you were being taken care of by this lady that rented us the apartment. She lived behind us in the same structure. And she took care of you. Lovely lady. I can't even remember her name, but she was a lovely lady. Sweet, just was crazy about you. And let's see from there.
Hang on 1 second. We're going to do something real quick here. One second here. This mic.
Too loud.
You blowing air. It's popping. It's okay. Just hang with what you're sitting, and I want you to get up. 1 second, but stay comfortable. We're going to move you forward just a hair. Move you forward just a hair. I like that. That should do. That should do. Fighting this little bastard, and I'll get on with it. Phil, you want to move your chair up just a hair? Now you can lean back.
Good, that's what I need.
I hear you. I hear you. I see what's going on. All right, go on. Just continue.
Wow, that was amazing how you all of a sudden jumped forward and changed real quick. You're a magician.
Camera, Phil.
Huh?
You can't tell it in the camera.
Yeah, well.
Are we taping?
Oh, we've been taping all along.
All right, then moving on in Lakeland and my job, I knew I had to go on into a different job, that job wasn't forever job, and I was really interested in air traffic control, so there were a massive amount of openings in the FAA controller business because of the Grand Canyon incident. And most people wouldn't know what the Grand Canyon incident was, but it was where two humongous airliners, Constellations, hit in midair over the Grand Canyon, and it was air traffic control was kind of weak at the time, so they had to have a big drive. All the people were killed in that crash, and they called it the Grand Canyon incident. And that made a lot of jobs in the Federal Aviation Agency at the time. So I went to my boss I was working at Bartow Air Base, and I went to my boss at the time and told him, I says, I have applied for a job with the FAA, and I'm going to give you two weeks notice as required by my contract. And he says, no, you have to stay for a full class of 6 months. And I said, no, I don't. And he fired me. He fired me, and that was when Phil was still in the womb, so to speak. And so those were tough times for me, for Shirley, for...
No, wasn't that Rick that was still being carried when you applied for the job?
I'm getting it mixed up, aren't
Yeah, because Rick was
I? No,
born.
that's right. That was Rick that was being carried. I'm getting it mixed up. Yeah, Rick was being... And I... are we still taping?
No, just go on.
And so I said, well, be that it may, I'm going to the FAA as quick as they hire me, and so I was hired on in February of 1950. I can't remember. Anyway, was hired on in February, about 2.5 weeks before Rick was born, and then got to Jacksonville as a controller. I was hired here and got to Jacksonville, and just as soon as I got here, they said, don't unpack your bags because we're going to send you to Oklahoma City. And of course, Rick was due to be born right away, and it was tough times. Luckily, we had a fabulous nurse at the doctor's office, the pediatrician's nurse had a great big room that she wanted to rent out, and it had a little kitchen in it, and she rented that to Shirley with you, Phil, and that's where you all stayed when I went to Oklahoma City. And you were there when Rick was born, of course, and I was in Oklahoma City about 2 weeks, I think, going to school, going to the FAA Academy. Had to go there for 3 months, so I didn't see Rick for first 3 months of his life.
Did Mama D or somebody come down when Rick was born, or?
Did when you were born, but no, we were kind of on our own then. Your mother did not get along good with my mother, and that was my mother's fault,
Yeah.
more than any, and so she did not want to stay there and have the baby, so she moved in with the nurse who had the room in Lakeland, and that was convenient because those were the doctors that were treating her pregnancy and so forth. So anyway, Rick was born, and when I was out in Oklahoma City for 2 weeks, I'd been there about 2 weeks, and then Harry called. Of course, brother Harry was a dentist in Lakeland, so he was right there. And he called me in about 7 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning to tell me that Rick was born. Everything was okay. And like I said, I didn't see Rick until it was just about 3 months. I went through school. Those are tough days. Didn't have any money. I wouldn't borrow any from my folks.
They weren't paying you while you were going to school?
Oh yeah, they were paying me. If you could live on $147
A week?
every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
I didn't have insurance, so it was tough times.
Yeah.
It was tough times. Fortunately, the nurse that Shirley was staying with you, they were very patient. It took me a while to pay them back rent. They didn't press me, but it was pretty tough back
Was Rick
then.
born in Baptist Hospital?
Rick was born in same hospital that you were born in, Lakeland Memorial.
Oh, in Lakeland.
Yeah.
Oh, so Mom...
Mark was born in Jacksonville. But you two were born in Lakeland.
Oh, so Mom moved up to... So this little apartment was not in Jacksonville, it was in Lakeland.
It was in Lakeland, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Lakeland. Her doctor, these were all intertwined. Harry was good friends of all the doctors, and we kind of got special treatment. And a nurse in the pediatrician's office saw our problem, and she had this room and rented that out to you, to Shirley and you, and was willing, and it took Rick in when he was born.
So we had to move out of the place that
You moved out from
the place that with the lady that babysitted me that liked me so much. We moved out of that place,
Yes,
and this
you
is
did.
a different place.
yeah, you did.
Yeah, because the rent was too high or something at that
No,
point.
I don't remember the whole circumstances, but
Oh.
that's what happened.
Okay.
And let's see,
And
then.
at that time, you didn't know where you were going to be going as a controller.
Oh no, I knew then.
You knew it was going to be Jacksonville.
When I was Jacksonville, and that was the good thing about the FAA. When they train you as a controller, they train you for a lifetime. They don't want you moving. You have to learn so much about the area and all the precise points and the airports and everything and the designators. They didn't want you moving, so that was good.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
When we came to Jacksonville, we came to stay. Let's see. Then we struggled. I came back up to Jacksonville and found a little old house over in Arlington, which I've probably driven you by there, but I can't remember it. It was a dump. There were so many roaches in it, you could hear them crawling at night.
Yeah.
But it served the purpose at the time. I could rent it for $75 a month and barely make ends meet. It were tough times for all of us. Then let me see. We moved to. As soon as I was able, we finally got medical insurance somewhere right after Rick was born, and the FAA. And we all got medical insurance, which was good. And that's about the time we bought the house in Harborview, which was really neat because it had it had 3 bedrooms and 2 baths.
Wow.
And a carport.
Yeah. Very big backyard with woods.
Well, it was triangular. It was little in front and humongous in the back.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I killed a rattlesnake back there, a big rattlesnake. You don't remember that, do you?
I do remember. I remember you're killing snakes, and I don't know. I think I remember the rattlesnake.
Well, somewhere I got a picture of it, but it got lost in the rush, whatever. But it was over 6 feet. Had 12 rattlers on it.
Did you shoot him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blew his head off.
With your Browning?
No, with my the 12 gauge shotgun. And so we were in there, and that's where Mark was born. I don't remember all the details and everything, but that's where Mark was born in Harborview. And
just sort of, spend some time talking about the house in Harborview, moving in, and what it was like there, and what you remember. And
well, yeah, that it was convenient in a sense driving to Hilliard. We had just moved to Hilliard, and a lot of controllers were moving into Harborview because we're only about a half a mile from US 1, and that's how we got to Hilliard. We went to Hilliard on US 1, and our carpools, we could carpool. There were so many controllers moved into Harborview that it was not hard to get a carpool. We had to have carpools back then because you couldn't afford to drive by yourself every day. And so it was convenient to Hilliard as could be. I think it was only about 38 miles from Harborview. It wasn't bad at the time. That's where you started the school, of course, in the Harborview Elementary. It was a brand new school. You went to the first and second grade there.
Yeah.
And that's the teacher that found out you were dyslexic, very dyslexic.
In my second grade?
Second grade teacher found out that you were, she determined that
Yeah.
Dyslexia was so new at the time.
Now, if I remember right, I also had really bad stutter, and I remember Mom working with me to help fix my stutter.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I don't remember too much about that, but no. At any rate, Harborview was not a bad place. It was. They found out later that back in behind us was where they covered up a garbage dump, you know, and there was probably all kinds of radon and all this stuff coming out of the ground back there. But we made good use of it. We had a big piece of property back there, and y'all had a great sandbox. Everybody liked. That's where you got pinworms. I got pinworms. God, the cure for pinworms back then was awful. And we all had to do it.
What was it? I don't remember.
Pinworms were caused by cat feces, and cat feces loved our sandbox. I mean, cats loved our sandbox, and they would do their business in the sandbox. After that, of course, I put something in it to kill the possibility of there being, and put a cover over it. But you all had the best sandbox in the world back there. I had it was about 10 by 10, and got that real nice builder sand and put it in there for you.
Yeah.
And it had a little roof over the top of it, and so the rain, you know, wouldn't. We covered it. Then right next door, there was a man that lived there that we got very friendly with. Worked for Eastern Airlines. He was a baggage handler. They did lots of things, but and then right next door to him was the Suttons.
Yeah.
The Suttons, and that's the guy that flew the plane to Venezuela and crash landed on the top of Angel Falls, and
He was on Truth or Consequences?
no, he wasn't on. Was it?
Yes.
One of those. He was on one of those shows when he got back after the story was all told.
Yeah.
Arthur Godfrey, a very, very famous radio and TV panelist show, who was big with the FAA. He had his own twin-engine Gulfstream, and that was the ultimate commercial private plane back then, turboprop. He had a ranch in Venezuela, and when Sutton, his name was Bill Sutton, and the barber, he happened to be my barber that cut my hair that went with him down there, and they had to drop down the Angel Falls, and Bill Sutton got hurt his leg, and he said, "Go on, I'm gonna die." And the barber went on ahead and found Indians, and they canoed. They had little motored canoes and went back up and got Bill Sutton, got him out, and they put him under house arrest in Caracas, Venezuela, the capital. I think Caracas is the capital. And Arthur Godfrey heard about him putting him in house arrest and that he was an air traffic controller. And when he heard he was an air traffic controller, he went to the police. The Venezuelan government loved Godfrey because he owned massive amounts of cattle ranches there and was very well known and very rich and supported the Venezuelan government. And so Arthur Godfrey, because he was an air traffic controller, said, "Well, I'm going to help my buddies at whatever." And so he went to Venezuelan government and got him out of house arrest because he broke the law going up to Angel Falls. Anyway, Arthur Godfrey influenced the government to let him fly him out and fly him and the barber out and flew him back up to, I guess he brought him into Jacksonville. Yeah. And then after that, I guess he was on that talk show or whatever it was, but it was really stupid because there wasn't any gold on Angel Falls. It was just but Bill Sutton was, anyway, that was an interesting story. I watched him build that tri-pacer in his backyard. Bill Sutton, his backyard and mine are all pie-shaped lots. He built a little garage back there to totally rebuild this tri-pacer.
And that's what he used to fly to South America?
Tri-pacer, a Piper tri-pacer. He had put an extra tank in it, and they island hopped to the long jaunt from, I get my islands mixed up down there, but there's one long jaunt for a Piper tri-pacer to me, but it made it.
Mm-hmm.
My friends, Bob Gilbert, and who had an A&P, that's aircraft and power certificate. They can overhaul engines and certify them. They were controllers too. They rebuilt the engine for him, so it was a really good engine. And they rebuilt the engine, and Bill covered the plane, the whole plane himself, back in this little place he built back there, and put the wings on at the airport, and test flew it for about 25 hours. And the Hall, I remember the barber's name. He was my barber and Bill's barber, and we got to talking about it, and he was adventuresome, and he says, I'll fly down there with you. And so that's how the barber went down there.
I remember that plane so clearly, and I've always just had images of the plane in a little carport inside of the house, and I never knew the story. I never remembered the story, but I remember the plane. I remembered he would let me go over there and hang around and just kind of watch him, and it's always real nice.
Yeah, well, he's kind of a wacky guy. He and his wife fought all the time, and he had 3 boys that were in trouble all the time. I can't remember their names. One of them was named Danny, and I forget anyway. One of them got in serious trouble, but anyway, that was the story. The other story out in Harborview was his 2 twins that lived one house down from us in Harborview. They were teenage boys, and they were always fighting each other and chasing each other. And one day, one was chasing the other, and he pulled the sliding glass door too in front of him, and the other one went through the sliding glass door and literally cut the boy to pieces. I mean, it's heavy glass. It's real heavy glass in those sliding glass. And there wasn't anybody around. And I remember Bill Sutton, the guy I just described to you. Bill Sutton was at home, but I was between that house, the accident, and Bill Sutton's, and Donnie, they called him. I heard him screaming, said, Donnie went through the door again. Donnie went through the door. He was screaming, and when I ran over there, and he was laying in the dining area, blood just pumping, shooting out all over the place. And they had a maid there, a black maid that she was, if a black maid could ever turn white, she did, but she was absolutely petrified. She couldn't move to help the boy. I ran inside the door. I remember I had to tear through the screen door to open it up and get in the house because the maid wouldn't do anything. I ran in there, and I had to scream to the maid. I said, you go get me every towel you've got, every clean towel you got. And so I just immediately started closing the wounds the best I could with towels, wrapping it around them and everything. And I told the brother to settle down and call an ambulance. You couldn't dial 911 then, but whatever. I said, dial emergency immediately. And by the time the ambulance got there, I had everything stopped at one place right here. it was almost like it cut his jugular vein, but I was having to hold my hand here. Well, that's the way I went to the hospital in that ambulance, holding this, and I had towels wrapped around one place, and his leg was just wide open. His muscle was just laying open where it went through, and I'd wrapped towels around that, and it wasn't gushing out anywhere. This was the worst place right here when we left. So the ambulance attendant said, "Hey, you just hold on to it and come with us." And man, I had blood all over me. I mean, my arms was covered with blood. And anyway, we got to the hospital, but who met us at the ambulance but the boy's mother? She was a nurse at St. Luke's Hospital where the ambulance took us. And of course, she's a nurse. She didn't pass out. But he lived. It took 275 stitches and clamps, I think, to get him together. But he lived through it. That was an interesting case.
But the mother was really grateful.
Very definitely. Anyway, that was a case, but I can't remember that much about Harborview.
Well, tell me the day that I came home from school when President Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah, that was really interesting. You came home from...
Harborview Elementary.
Was it Harborview Elementary or was it nursery?
No, it was Harborview Elementary.
I came home from Kitty College.
It was
I remember that day.
1963,
Okay.
so I was in first grade.
I was in Kitty College.
Well,
I remember it.
You came in and let's see what you said. You said that you said something.
I'll help you out with this. We got let off of school early because Abraham Lincoln was killed.
That's it. You came home and said Abraham Lincoln has been killed, and we knew something wasn't right, so we turned the television on, and they were flashing that Kennedy had been assassinated. That's right. You came home and said Abraham Lincoln, and that was. Yeah, those are, I guess, very historic times. So that obviously that's the year we left Harborview in '65. That's when I bought the house in Rolling Hills. And
now, but let's back up a second. Tell about Barney.
Barney the Boston Bulldog, or the song you remember we used to sing, Barney the Boston Bulldog. It was your mother's dog.
To the music of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was your mother's dog. I mean, that dog.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. And how
I don't remember a lot. It was they were not very smart with cars, not smart at all with cars, and we tried to keep him in, but he was so small. Boston Bulldogs are grown; they're small, and I couldn't keep him fenced in. I tried. We had a patio area, and I had board fence, and I put wire around, but he would get out of that. But this one night, he got out. And ran off. They didn't have sense direction like German Shepherds. They just didn't have that sense of direction. And but boy, that dog would sleep right at your mother's feet all the time. She came in and liked that rocking chair. You remember we had the rocking chair that she would sit in all the time. And that dog would sit there. Every once in a while, she'd let him come up in her lap. But that was really her dog. That was a terrible loss when that dog got killed for her.
It seems like I remember she wouldn't let herself get close to any other dogs. Like when we got Jacques later on, she tried to keep her distance from him because of that.
Well, she didn't do too good of a job because Jacques got under everybody's skin. Jacques was such a neat dog.
You remember, Barney, we would say you would get us all up in your lap when you were home in the evenings to say prayers.
and you would call Barney up into the lap to do the prayers, and he would actually close his little eyes because we would peek, and he would be up there with us, right at your face, doing the prayers. You remember that?
I sorta, but
There was one Christmas I can remember that we got a lot of stuff. Rick got his famous treasure chest, and we had all these other, I remember just getting tons of toys that Christmas. Do you have any memories about that? I also remember one Christmas where you sprayed water up on the house, and the water dropped on the leaves and everything outside and froze, and it was like our own little white Christmas that we had.
yeah, well, we turned the sprinkler on, don't you remember?
Yeah,
Out in
yeah.
the front yard, people did that back. We used to have harder freezes back then, as you may or may not remember. We had harder freezes, and we turned the sprinkler on and make a pretty icicles and what have you.
Yeah.
And but we had good times. Harborview is kind of a bad memory in my day. The sale of the house, the man lied to us, and it caused a lot of heartache for me. So I guess I blocked out a lot of the memories about Harborview.
There was a neighbor that we had across the street that had a pool. Every now and then we went over there.
Don't you remember he was a retired master sergeant from the Army, and he ran a equipment rental place down on Lem Turner.
I had
And
no
he had
memory
a
of
son
that
that was one of y'all's age.
Yeah.
I remember when they were making the pool, though. I remember they got in it and it started caving in before they put the concrete in, and it was going back. It was just going. They built the pool real close to the house, and it was caving in, going right back up under the house, and they were out there at midnight with the big trucks and everything, the pool company pouring dirt in that. That was more heartache in that darn pool. And But eventually, a guy that got riffed out of the Air Force bought that house. We were kind of friendly for a while, but yeah, what else in that neighborhood? Anyway.
I remember Mark. I remember, this is weird, but I remember Mark's first birthday in that house. And it's my oldest memory. Y'all celebrating on the bed in your bedroom. And so you have any memories of Mark in that house?
Not too much. I don't remember much.
He wore a little cowboy hat, and he said "foal" instead of "Phil" when he pronounced my name when he learned how to talk.
Yeah, I remember too. I remember the spring horse that you got.
Yeah.
Everybody loved that horse so much.
And the whole rump had been torn off of it, and it would still work. We would still get on it.
Well, that's
on the
later on.
porch.
That's when we moved over to Rolling Hills, when the rump of it was torn off.
That's not how I remember it, but
Doesn't matter. The first one, though, I made you, and I couldn't get the
Yeah.
right tension springs. That's Rick wouldn't remember that, but I made that for you.
No, it was like a wooden profile.
It was a wooden profile, and I put a
Handlebar.
straight old dowel through for to hold on to. But the springs, it was so darn heavy that the springs didn't ever do real good. But finally, I could afford to buy you the rubber ones. The really nice ones that really work good.
Well, I remember Phil could rock that thing. I guess it was the second one. He would rock it so hard he could hit the ground with the front legs.
You
That
could
would
too,
bounce.
butthead. You could too.
Yeah. Those were good memories, that horse. And I guess the old Army Jeep. Remember Phil?
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the Army
that,
Jeep?
The Army Jeep.
Yeah, that was Harborview. They got that Jeep, and you remember I concreted in the patio between the porch and
Yes.
I concreted that in, and it made a nice play area. It was under the shade, the heat of the summer. Y'all played a lot in there, and on the porch. That was a nice porch. It was
That little room in there, that little closet room, I remember
Yes.
you did a paint by number German Shepherd head. It was reminiscent of Duke. Now, we had another dog, Duke, before Barney.
Yeah, but he was very sickly. I took him over here to where this place on Park Street, that great big place. They took him and tried to nurture him back to health. I couldn't handle it. He was very sickly. He had
Yeah.
a lot of problems. Yeah, that was called Duke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I named him after the dog I gave to Mom and Pop, or when I was in the Air Force.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I tell that story before? Then I gave them that German Shepherd and paid a whole month's salary for him, shipped him to Arcadia, and man, that was a mean, daggone dog. Boy, they had to give him to somebody out in the country.
And they had another dog that they kept in a pen when we were kids named Butch.
Oh, that was Butch. That wasn't Duke.
Oh, it was Butch.
Duke was the one Duke was the one that I had when we were in Harborview.
Okay.
And got rid of. That was Duke. Butch was the one, the big German Shepherd. He weighed about 100 pounds. He was a humongous German Shepherd.
They kept him in a little pen. I remember him when we were visiting the Arcadia when we were kids, and he was still in that pen, like a pen made out of chicken wire or something.
Well,
Is that
shit.
the one that hated me?
What?
What was the dog that really hated me?
He hated everybody.
Oh, that was probably him. He hated everybody. I was careful around him myself. Butch.
But let's
Gosh.
get
Mother-
back to
Yeah. What? Get back to what?
Yeah, Harborview.
Well, that's Harborview is, that I guess there's a lot of memories that I just.
Probably we have fonder
Blocked out.
memories of it because that was a bright, our early childhood and this and that when we were first forming memories, and so
Well, that's
it
where
had a
you-
different reflection for you.
Tell us about Mom. Did y'all get along really well? Did y'all have happy times there? Or
Shirley, you're talking about.
yes.
Yeah.
There's somebody out there.
I'll check on it. Go ahead. Tell us about Mom.
Hey. Anyway, where was I?
Talking about Mom, what your all's relationship was like in Harborview.
Yeah, it were tough times. Tough times in Harborview. We were struggling financially, and I would not take any financial help from them other than the gifts they gave everybody at Christmas.
Your
But
parents.
They were tough times. Shirley had a lot of migraine headaches, and we had to get through them. But we got along. We got along good. We joined the symphony, and
That was in Harborview?
I think we may have. I think we got into symphony there.
She was doing little theater at some point, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm. And
Was that
I'm
in
trying to
Harborview?
think when she was doing little theater. I think it was there and in Rolling Hills that she was doing little theater.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we had our problems. All people did when you have the problems that we had. But we got along. We got along fine.
Mm-hmm.
We were permanent symphony for years. Probably, I know I was a member for 17 years. A little bit of it was with Kathy, but most of it was with Shirley. We had tickets with the Stokes.
Mm-hmm.
The Stokes sat right behind us in symphony, and
And Fulghams too.
Fulghams had tickets. We all had tickets right there. And I know in symphony night that the 6 of us would have dinner together out somewhere, and mostly just Joe Stokes and Dathel.
Mhm.
And I don't remember when we were still members of the symphony when Shirley passed away. But the times were kind of tough there in Harborview, and it was tough after we moved to Rolling Hills, and I found out we got swindled on the house. Supposedly I got a release on my VA, and I didn't. And luckily I got the best lawyer in Jacksonville to handle it. We were going to have to pay $3,000 because the people that we sold the house to junked it. I put a big air conditioner in it. They stole that when they left, and back then $3,000. My gosh, I only paid $9,000 for the house in Harborview, and it was going to be $3,000 worth of that I would have to pay the Veterans Administration.
Yeah.
Luckily, I hired a very good lawyer, one that was good at this to get us out of it. It took probably 3 years of being patient to get it all settled.
Well,
Finally, one day, my lawyer called me up and said, how much money can you get right now within an hour? This is to settle the house being repossessed by the Veterans Administration in Harborview. And I had $625 in the bank. I said, $625. He says, I'll call you right back. He called me right back, says, can you get down there right now? I said, yes, I can, with the money. He says, a cashier's check. I got a cashier's check for $625 and went down there, and and they settled it in place of $3,500 and something. I didn't have it. I said, I can't pay it. And that included the lawyer's fees of $625. So God, good Lord, got me out of that one. Sure enough, I'm telling you. And that I think that's when we really started enjoying the house in Rolling Hills.
yeah.
But I remember we moved into Rolling Hills. I hadn't been in there 2 months, and I got strep throat, extremely bad strep throat. That's the most I ever. No, I missed one other time that long, but I missed 2 whole weeks of work. My temperature was running 104 degrees, and I've never been so sick in all of my life as I was. That strep throat, and that's right after we moved in. I can remember the air conditioning man coming in. We did not have central air in the house, and didn't have any air conditioning in the house. and I knew Shirley was going to have it, and if not all of us. But it was set up for central air. It just didn't have it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he came out there with me in the sick bed running 103.5 degrees, and we made a deal for the air conditioner. if you can believe. And they put the air conditioning in. He covered his face or something, I don't know, but we got air conditioning. And so that was right when we first moved in. And I
remember Mom taking us kids, to go have a picnic in the stud framed house in Rolling Hills. And we sat, it was a hot day, and we sat in the middle of the framed walls, and she put a little thing out, tablecloth out, and we all had sandwiches and little drinks and all right there. She was so excited about that house.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was really a big step from Harborview.
Yeah.
I mean, we were getting out of there. It was hard to sell a house back then. That's why I was tricked into thinking that I got my release on my VA loan. And I remember when we bought the house, it was I think either 127 or $347. I'm getting it mixed up with this house, but dollars a month. And the guys at work says, "How in the world are you ever going to make those payments?" I had just been promoted to a GS-10. I'd made controller, but I wasn't a radar because we didn't have radar yet. But
Wow, I didn't even know that.
I was a controller, so I said, "We're going." And this guy lied to us, but anyway, that was a good move into that house. People said, "How in the world?" I says, "Close management. I'll make it," and I did. I never. 100. I think they're 127 because the payments on this house when I bought it was $347 a month, and that included insurance and taxes.
Golly.
Oh,
I've never even paid rent that cheap in my entire life.
well, anyway, we bought this house right at the bottom when nobody could sell anything at the bottom. 1970,
Kind of like it is now.
77. You know, boy, it was tough times, boy. 78 we bought this house. Anyway, the house in Harborview, we put all of our own ads on it, and we had a 2-car garage. You know, didn't have it long because I built that game room on there and carport.
How soon after we got the house did you put that on there?
I don't know. It was so surely. I don't know I cannot remember whether we did that so you could sleep out there and we could have a game room. Shirley had to have a private room because of her migraines were so bad. She had to sleep in a separate room.
That came way later.
Did it come way later?
You wanted a shop area with a workbench, and you wanted the pool table. And I had to be somewhere in the vicinity of 9 years old when that was built.
Okay.
When I was 7 years old, you built that brick fence, and I remember you telling me, "Well, I don't have much for your birthday, so this wall is yours. The brick wall is yours." And I remember constantly telling everybody, "Leave my damn brick wall alone. That's mine." And
I vaguely remember that.
Anyway, that lattice work
Eskimos.
brick fence was, compared to a professionally done one, was not very well.
Oh,
But
it's beautiful.
it's still there, by the way. I put enough mortar in it but anyway, I also poured that patio back there. And you remember the little faucet that I put back there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the fountain.
Drinking fountain I put back in there. And I remember the first, what was it? The cucumbers. Remember the first cucumbers I planted on the fence back there?
Yeah.
We could have hauled out. I gave people bushel baskets full. We grew cement, and then after that they wouldn't grow.
And Jacques used to run up and down that fence and wear a path in it, and you made this wall out of chicken wire that he would run into to stop him from running and tearing up the ground.
Yeah, well, it's and then we built the shed back there, and then we built your painting room.